Black Sunday, Black Stars. So let's talk about Dogma for a second. Now, I don't mean the movie. The movie's fantastic, but let's talk about actual Dogma. When you start getting into Dogma, you start missing out on a lot of the universe. Let's say the universe is this big. Every Dogma covers this tiny, tiny, tiny bit of it. See, the problem with Dogma is, people recognize that consistency breeds stronger results. We kind of know this as a scientific fact. You repeat things with, proper dosage and assimilation periods and all that, you have excellent results. Consistency is key. Dogma provides consistency. That's great. Problem with Dogma is Dogma may not contribute to all circumstances. You got to remember this little thing. It's called chaos. Now, when I say chaos, we're talking about chaos in the scientific community. We're not talking about chaos in the broad general definition of it. Chaos in the scientific world is pretty much just uncertainty. But it's not just uncertainty. It's the fact that there are innumerable factors at work in any system at any given time, and while the grand majority of them may be calculably insignificant to whatever results you're looking for, them together, or certain ones that may be neglected, may throw off that angle just a little bit. What's a slight divergence here down the road is a major divergence. It's because of one tiny little chaos factor down here. Put it 1/2 a degree to the side. Didn't seem like a big deal down here, but now out here, down the road, it's a huge divergence, and you don't know what would have happened otherwise. There are so many factors at work at any given moment that you simply cannot account for everything. And this brings us back to this idea of dogma. Because dogma aims to capsulize, to compartmentalize life, or certain activities and ideas in life, it tends to say this is how it is. It puts it into a much more black and white scenario. And you end up missing out on a lot of life for the sake of dogma. So while we can certainly say, well, the trends show this, and the data seems to consistently point this way, that's fine, but you have to understand that those are still just, generally speaking, approximations that may work for a large cross-section of the population, but doesn't apply to everyone. Nothing is universal. Nothing can apply to everyone. How many times have I mentioned that, at least as of the last I heard, it takes no fewer than 5 different theories to explain reality? You see, it's because at every different scale, things start acting differently. At certain scales, gravity seems to disappear completely. And other scales, gravity seems to be the most major playing factor. Gravity, by the way, is the irreconcilable force of the 4 fundamental forces and is kind of the sticking point for physicists. Well, one of the major sticking points. So you have to understand that not everything works on every scale, and not every circumstance applies to the same criteria over and over and over again. The criteria change with the circumstance, and the circumstance changes with the scale, and the criteria change with the scale, and the scale changes with the circumstance. It really creates this idea of more of subjective reality, and people who are strict logicians and modern philosophers, I don't like the term so much, but they want to say that that there is only absolute reality, and while we may all perceive it differently, the fact that absolute reality exists means that everything can be logically and absolutely derived and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. If nobody can experience absolute reality, and if everything changes at every scale and is circumstantially dependent, there may be absolute reality. There may be. I don't have any problem believing there's an absolute reality. But our ability to observe and measure it seems too inferior, too limited right now to be able to say exactly what the nature of that reality is. And that being said, it really means that we need to back off, cool our heels on this dogma thing for a while, and stop being so hardlined about everything. You know, it's fine to say this is what works based on my experience, based on calculations, based on tests and subjects and whatnot, but you have to realize that so much research is constantly being refined, and then we're finding lots of research that had flaws in it that we didn't catch, 2 decades ago, but now we're catching flaws in it now. So that increases the idea of the subjectivity of it. Does this mean that they're not pointing to, objective absolute reality? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that you can't always use data. You can't always use statistics to point to reality, because quite honestly, quite frequently, the statistics, the data are wrong or are off. So let's cool it on the dogma. Let's cool it on how right everything has to be, and let's start focusing on how quality life can be, and what matters and what doesn't matter, and letting people be people and do their thing. Is that too much to ask? Think about it. Good journey.